at all.
And that's what I want to talk about next. But real quick, back to the case. I don't really want to go into a lot of detail
and I can
about
understand
the case.
why.
But I want to.
That's okay, and we don't have to go there.
But we're talking about a police report, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was given this book by a friend of from the group that we're involved in. If you want to mention that, but it's called the Criminal Law Handbook. It is saving me. It is absolutely saving me. But it says something in here because it talks about police reports. Arrest reports are almost always one-sided. Almost always one-sided. They recite only what the police claim took place, and they include only witnesses' statements that support the police theory. And that's what's happening in my case.
And that's why I recommend to all people, go to if you have a complaint, go to the police department yourself and file your complaint in person, in your own handwriting and in your own words. That's your version versus the police officer.
And it says in here that that's what you should be able to do. If you were arrested, by law, you're entitled to tell the police officer, I want my statement in my own words, and I have a right to come in and give it to you and sign it with my signature. And it appears that police aren't doing this anymore. They're not letting you do it. And it's a violation of your civil rights. But what's really interesting about this is that it says in here that this may backfire on the police when they don't let you put your own words in. It says here that, for instance, the police report can be used to discredit testimony of the police officer who prepared the report.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But let's get back into the judicial corruption. I've been studying judicial corruption for a long time. I want to be an expert on it. And I found this organization overseas. It's called Transparency International. And it's awesome. It's the only organization that I have found that is actually studying judicial corruption across the world. And they're trying to get the UN involved, the United Nations, because it's not just the judicial corruption. It's also like Amnesty International. And do you understand Amnesty International? Basically, they're trying to help people who, for example, they have if you go to Amnesty International, they have several cases that they're tracking. For example, there's a man who had a website, I think in Pakistan, and now he is in custody. He's behind bars because of freedom of speech. He basically talked against his government. No different than what's happening in China, no different than what happened in Iran when they had the elections in Iran. So we need to support organizations such as Amnesty International and like this one, Transparency International. Now, Transparency International, their whole nonprofit is identifying corruption, and for example, judicial corruption. And this would be in your case. Corruption is undermining judicial systems around the world, denying citizens access to justice and the basic human right to a fair and impartial trial, sometimes even to a trial at all, according to the Global Corruption Report of 2007. Corruption in judicial systems issued today by Transparency International. And what they call themselves are the Global Coalition Against Corruption. I spent part of the day today studying their website. And when courts are corrupt, ordinary people suffer. And that's what I've been complaining about now for over 20 years.
What made you mad enough that you wanted to do this show, that you wanted to tell what did you want to tell the American public? What really just got on your nerves that brought you to do this?
Well, about 2 years ago, it may have been 3 years ago, I was going to federal court. I was filing papers because I had petitioned the United States Navy regarding being improperly separated from the Navy. And when you're a military officer and you want to petition, you have to go through something called the Board of Correction of Naval Records. And once you're finished with what is called the BCNR, then you have to go to something called the United States Court of Federal Claims. You petition them, you file your papers, and then a judge reviews it. Well, what I found out is that the judge reviewing it was prejudiced against people. In my case, mine was very high level.
Do you think he was prejudiced against women or prejudiced against women of color? Or?
No, it wasn't prejudiced against women. In my case, I was filing a petition because I didn't believe that I was properly separated, and so I started looking at other cases like mine. If you do a search, there's something called in the military, if you're not properly separated and you want to petition your government through what is called the United States Court of Federal Claims, it's called the constructive service doctrine. So, for example, let's say you have, there are numerous cases where somebody may have been illegally separated, improperly separated, and they have to petition to be either reinstated or to be properly separated. But from the time that you left the military, or the military said that you were no longer of use to them until you petition and your case is settled, let's say it's 10 years, let's say it's 20 years, that time you're entitled to be paid. So the government has to pay you. Mm-hmm. There are some people who've been paid for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And in my case, and I found out through searching the internet, the judges at the United States Court of Federal Claims are really against certain members in the military, and they're not listening to their cases. And then it went up to, I guess it went up to the next court, which is the appellate court, but it has a certain name when you go from a military court to another court. And then you go to the Supreme Court, but it appears recently either that court or the Supreme Court ruled that this court was violating the rights of the service members who were petitioning, mm-hmm. saying that they hadn't been properly separated. Mm. So in my case, they did with this, judicial corruption, and it falls into two categories. Judicial corruption falls into two categories. Political interference in the judicial process by the legislative or executive branch, or bribery. So this organization is trying to understand when it's judicial corruption and when it's bribery. Mm-hmm. And I think in the United States, I don't think it's bribery. I think it's political judicial corruption from the executive branch. That's what I believe.
I agree with you totally. Everything that happens in America still goes right back to New World Order, you know, because they start from the top and work down, and when they go down, they get to us. They just want to keep us down, and the way they do that is either throw us in jail or make us homeless.
And that's what Amnesty International is saying. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they're targeting selective individuals. It's just like you were mentioning the two women